Now let's go ahead and add in our final variables in order to get the full aggregate expenditures model. So here, so far, we've only talked about consumption and investment. We consider this to be the simple aggregate expenditures model, but when we include government spending, exports, and imports, this is exactly how we get the full model. So the next few sections are going to be adding in these particular variables into the model that we've built up so far. So there are a few things that we want to note before we add in our next variable. We talk about injections and withdrawals. So spending injections include investment, government spending, and exports. Essentially, in order to be considered a spending injection, this is going to go ahead and put money into our economy. So when we have more investment, when we have more government spending, when we have more exports, more money is flowing within our economy. So we consider this to be spending injections. On the other hand, we have spending withdrawals. They include savings, taxes, and imports. If we increase any of these variables right here, S, T, and M, we're actually taking away money from the economy. So the higher the savings rate, the higher the taxes, the more imports that we have, money is actually flowing away from our nation. In order for us to have equilibrium under the full model, we now have I plus G plus X equals S plus T plus M. No longer is it just going to be I equals to S. We add in all these extra variables. I, G, and X, the sum of all these has to equal ST, the sum of S, T, and M. So left-hand side has to equal the right-hand side. And once again, if you notice, the vast majority of the variables, we take a look on the left-hand side, investment, government spending. If we actually subtract out imports over to the left side, X minus M, these are all things that are going to be affected by the multiplier. Savings and taxes are not affected directly by the multiplier. There's some type of mechanism and channel that's going to be indirectly affected, and we'll take a look at the mechanisms and channels of that. So let's go ahead and add in government spending. So how do you think government spending is going to affect our macroeconomic equilibrium? Thankfully for us, government spending has the same impact on our equilibrium as a change in investment. So remember, investment was this second component that we added into our model. We said that, hey, it is affected by the multiplier. So when we have an increase of $100 of investment, it's going to increase our income by something greater than that amount. Remember that our MPC in this example is 0.75, so our multiplier is equal to 4. So here, a $100 increase in investment increases our income by $400. When we have a $100 increase in government spending, so suppose $100 on the federal, state, or local sort of levels of government, they decide to increase government spending by 100, it has the same exact impacts. So here, we go from point E to point B, government spending increases by $100, our aggregate and equilibrium income increases by something greater than that amount, here $400 because our multiplier is equal to 4. And here they act in the same exact manner because both are seen as injections into the economy. So thankfully for us, investment and government spending, they have the same exact impacts in our macroeconomic equilibrium. They are both seen as injections and they are both affected by the multiplier. However, suppose that we go ahead and want to add in taxes now. How do you think taxes are going to affect our equilibrium? So suppose the government says, not only are we going to increase government spending, let's go ahead and increase your taxes. So increase taxes by $100. Do you think it's going to have a greater impact than government spending, the same exact impact as government spending, or something less than government spending? In this instance, it's going to be less than government spending. It's not going to be the same as government spending because remember, taxes are not going to be affected by the multiplier, and by that same logic, it shouldn't be greater than government spending as well. So when the government increases taxes by $100, it's going to decrease aggregate or equilibrium income because, hey, we as consumers, we don't like taxes, so if our taxes go up, we're not going to spend as much, and we're going to notice that, hey, our savings line shifts over by the amount of the tax. So here, taxes go, when we decrease savings, when taxes go up by 100, we shift over the savings line to the left by that amount, and we're going to notice that a new equilibrium emerges where we have equilibrium income equal to $4,300. So here, you wouldn't expect the full multiplier effect. You wouldn't expect a $100 increase in taxes to decrease our income by $400 because we notice that, hey, the government spending is affected by the multiplier, while taxes do not get that full direct impact. Because of this, taxes have a less direct impact on income than an equivalent change in government spending because some of a tax is paid using savings, both of which are seen as withdrawals. And we're gonna work through a little bit of an example with this using a few mathematics. And there's a lot of different reasons why policymakers or government officials would like to pursue tax changes over government spending changes, even though economically the model tells us that tax changes are going to have less of a direct impact in equilibrium income in terms of the entire economy. We'll take a look at that in chapter number 10. There are just a lot of political implications of the entire sort of economics and politics. So the intertwinings of politics and economics coming all together. Public choice theory, as it's formally called. So let's go ahead and take a look at the tax change and see why it's going to have a less direct impact in our economy than an equivalent change in government spending. So here, take a look at the tax change. With the tax change, the main conclusion that we want to draw out for this is that taxes have less direct impact on income, so equilibrium or aggregate income, than an equivalent change, change in government spending. And this is something that's going to sort of come back to haunt us in later chapters as well. So taxes have a less direct impact on income than an equivalent change in government spending. So here, we're going to notice that when taxes go up by 100, when government spending increases by 100, this government spending is going to be greater. It's going to have a greater impact on our equilibrium income. This is why it's sort of called that our spending multiplier is greater than our tax multiplier. So let's go ahead and use the numbers that are given to us in this example. So taxes increase by $100. So taxes increase by $100. So when taxes increase by $100, who's going to bear this burden? It's going to be people like you and I. So essentially, all the individuals, all the citizens within the country are going to bear this burden. The government says, I'm going to increase taxes by $100, say $100 million or something along those lines. It's going to be consumers who bear the burden. Consumers bear this burden. And how exactly are we going to bear this burden? When our taxes increase by $100, it's essentially saying that we've gotten poor by $100. So remember this equation. Y equals C plus S. So when taxes increase by $100, remember this Y right here is our disposable income. So our disposable income goes down by $100. So if the left-hand side goes down by $100, what does this mean about the right-hand side? What does it mean about consumption and savings? It tells us that consumption and savings have to change due to taxes changing. So here, this is exactly how we bear this burden. We change consumption and savings, so essentially our consumption and savings habits due to taxes changing. So anytime taxes change, it inherently tells us that we're going to be changing our consumption and savings habits. But the big question that we want to ask from this is, how much do consumption and savings exactly change by? So how much do each of these change? Is there a specific value where we can see how much consumption is going to change and how much savings is going to change? Is it going to be more towards consumption, less towards savings? Is it going to be more towards savings, less towards consumption? Or is it going to be equal split between the two? In order to see this, remember we have our good buddies, the marginal propensity to consume and the marginal propensity to save. So here, MPC and MPS. This is going to help us answer this particular question. Remember, in all the examples that we've worked with so far, basically building up this model, our MPC was equal to 3/4, so 0.75, which told us that our marginal propensity to save equals to 0.25. So let's go ahead and do MPC first. So here, what was the equation for MPC? The equation that we're going to use is MPC equals change in C over change in Y. So once again, this equation comes very, very handy. It's our good buddy for this entire chapter. And which one of these variables are we trying to solve for? We're trying to solve for this change in C once again. We know what our MPC is. We know how much our income has changed by. So when taxes change, it's inherently changing our income. So our unknown is going to be the change in C. And this is going to tell us exactly how much consumption is going to change by. So here, fill up the information that we know. 0.75 for MPC. Change in C is exactly what we're solving for. And income, in this case, our change in income is a negative 100. Remember that the multiplier does work in both directions, so signs are very important. And when taxes go up, that means our income goes down. So solve for change in C. Change in C, it tells us that our change in C is going to be negative $75. So when our taxes go up by $100, we're going to drop our consumption by $75. By the same logic, we can use MPS. That equation, MPS equals change in S over change in Y. We know MPS is 0.25. We know change in Y, which is minus 100. And we're trying to solve for change in S. So multiplying MPS by the change in Y, we'll get our change in S, which is equal to negative 25. So here, we notice that our change in savings is going to be minus $25. But for now, we're not finished yet. This is only the intermediary step. Which one of these variables is going to be affected by the multiplier? Is it consumption or is it savings? It's going to be consumption. Remember, CIG, net exports, these are the things that are affected by the spending multiplier. Once again, our multiplier is equal to 1 over 1 minus MPC, which equals to 1 over 1 minus 0.75. And here, remember, the spending multiplier is equal to 4. So what's the next and final step? We notice that, hey, consumption is affected by the multiplier, so therefore, equilibrium income changes by the spending change. The spending change is going to be the change in C right here, so minus 75, multiplied by our spending multiplier, which is 4 in this instance. So here, our equilibrium or aggregate income is going to drop by $300. So minus $300 when taxes increase by $100. So here, we don't get the full impact of the spending multiplier because a portion of this $100 is going to go towards consumption and the other portion is to savings. So here, when we increase government spending by 100, we notice that our income actually increased by $400. When we increase taxes by $100, income is only going to fall by $300. It's not the full $400 amount. So this is essentially showing us the specific mathematics behind this change from equilibrium point B to equilibrium point G right here. So minus $300 towards our equilibrium income. Our new resting spot is going to give us an equilibrium income of $4,500. So once again, the main idea from all of this is that the tax multiplier is less than the government spending multiplier, and we can graphically illustrate it here as well as show you the mathematics behind it. And I would highly encourage you to do a lot of these examples of the tax multiplier and the spending multiplier, because once again, we will see this in later chapters as well. So this is the first time that we've seen it. We'll see it again. In the next section, we're going to take a close look at a special multiplier known as the balanced budget multiplier, which ties into the idea of government spending and taxes increasing by the same amount, which is what we did in this particular lecture.